Hey, guys, it is Allison. I am the host of your show, Allison Answers Mission Awake. I cannot wait to sit down with you today and go over how we are going to crush the mediocrity in your life that has been plaguing our society since the beginning of time. I cannot wait to have a real deal conversation that includes intelligence, fun, excitement, and real actionable steps to make a real difference in the life that you're living now and making it into something you can be damn proud of and excited to live. Sit down, put on your damn seatbelt, and get ready for the ride of your life. Hey, guys, how are you today? I have a woman that I am so honored to have on this show. And her name is Jill Bunny, and that is her actual real name. The little backstory is the way that I met Jill was at a Women in Business conference where she had spoken, and she captivated me. One, initially by her beauty, her physical beauty, but there was an essence behind her that I just experienced. I could see it. And she has so much to offer. When I went to look up Jill after she's going to come on the show, and I know that all the different things that she does to help other people. And when I did the backstory on her, and I found under the hood the struggles that she went through, and she used them she recognized that they were for her and that they were not happening to her. And the value, the grace that she has to move through these struggles, and then to take those struggles and kind of refine them and then give them away as tools to help other people is just incredible to me. So what you're about to experience is a woman who is going to show you a way to honor your struggles, have the right kind of mindset. And also, if women are listening, it really doesn't matter if it's male or female, but the way that you look at yourself, your body, your image, and a way to overcome that kind of those crazy thoughts that we have in our mind. So without really, I could just gush over this woman. I literally started to cry when I read about the different things that you went through. I was like, wow, I loved her and didn't know why I loved her. And now I know why I love her, because she's been through it and she knows how to get out of it. So if you're in it and you want to get out of it, this is your girl. Basically, that's the shit we're going to talk about today.
Thank you. That was such a beautiful introduction. I can't thank you enough. Wow.
Couldn't have done it without you.
You can just keep going.
I'll go. But I couldn't do that introduction without you, right?
No, I'm so blessed to be here and spend this time with your amazing, amazing listeners, and hopefully give some value and some clarity. And that's what I'm all about, is just giving a different perspective. So there'll be some nuggets hopefully people can sit back on and really make the next year their year. And I call it the 2.0.
I love that, because that's what Jill is going to do. She's going to show you how to take a 1.0 life and turn it into a 2.0 life. Did I use your language properly?
You did. It was beautiful.
Let's go.
You're hired.
Yes. Can I work for you?
Absolutely.
I'm coming on a branding trip where I'm going to be like a superstar.
You already are. You guys. You already are. I'm feeling it.
Let's go. So we have to talk about that. But anyhow, could you share like the experiences that you have had, possibly the deeper struggles that you have overcome that has made you who you are today?
Absolutely. I think that's where, and we'll get into more of a 2.0, but I always say there's a blessing in our struggles, and we won't know it until we kind of go through it and we can see it from a different angle. And I would say that I didn't have this type of mindset in my early teens, in my 20s or my 30s. And I think it does kind of click in. Maybe our brains start to grow and adapt. But I would say my struggles started in high school. I have a brother that actually I don't speak to anymore, so he's not going to hear this podcast. And that's all about boundaries. And that's something that's really difficult for a lot of clients that I work with, that, when we have family, we feel that we have to be there for them all the time. And the hard thing is when somebody's narcissistic, when somebody's a bully, and we keep letting that in and again, we start to break down. And during that time, my brother had 7 misdemeanors growing up. So I was very isolated, very quiet. I didn't want to be known by anybody because you're just living in a toxic environment. So I decided to be really good at sports. I could just be out of the house. And luckily from that, I was pretty decent and went to university. And going to university, I actually met my first boyfriend. Never dated anyone before that because my brother was a shithead and nobody wanted to date, Pasma's sister, they called me.
Wow.
So that was my first boyfriend. And unluckily, I didn't know what a healthy relationship was. And I think we can all relate to that some way or another in our younger selves, where we think we should probably not have married our first. Right. Maybe I need some more experience. It was a trial run. And, but I wanted somebody to take care of me because I never had that growing up in that sense. So I just, latched on and I became like that glue. And I see that that was not the person that I should have been, but I was scared and I would do anything for that person. And I moved to England. And during that, lost, any friends, anybody that I really knew, and lost myself even more. Didn't have very much control in that relationship. But I think when we aren't the person that we want to be, we will attract that type of person back. So I basically attracted my brother in my boyfriend and my husband. And now being a therapist, I can see why I did that, but it makes sense now. And that was when I had an eating disorder. So I thought I couldn't control anything in my life. And the only thing I could do was control how I looked. And I thought if I was smaller, maybe I wouldn't take up as much space in the world and I wouldn't exist. And through all that space, my husband had an affair. He didn't want to be with me. I still wanted to be with him because I thought I don't have anybody else. Like, this guy is the only person in my life. And it's so sad to even think that. And I look back now, but he did the best thing that I could have ever asked for, but I didn't know it because I could have never left that relationship. So that was at 25. I was 23 when I got married, and I had to move back to Canada, back in with my family. And that was really difficult, going from being married and, being independent. I don't even say I was, but I thought I was independent, to then moving back home with my parents, starting over again, not having a job. And at that point, I was at the low of lows and just really didn't care about my life. And I was about 97 pounds. And like now I'm probably about 150. So if you can imagine how tiny I was,
Wow.
my dad's look on his face was utter disappointment. And it's heart-wrenching to see that, where he's like, I can't help my daughter. And I knew that there was some reason that I was still here and I've got to push. And, that was when I went down by the lake and I grabbed a magazine and I thought, what would make my dad proud of me? And lo and behold, it was being a fitness model. Don't even ask why that would make my dad proud, because it still doesn't make sense to me. But I look at it that I wasn't ready to
in your mind.
In my mind.
These
people, listeners, like, she crazy.
Could I just throw in there? I just want people to know, aren't you 5'11"?
Yeah.
So 5'11", 97 pounds. That's what I want. Yeah. Just to put it in perspective.
It was not a good situation. Mm-hmm. And, looking at that magazine, I thought, like, those girls are powerful. They're strong. And kind of reflecting back at that moment, I just wasn't ready to deal with my mental struggles and that health. And I just thought I could change my exterior. And when I change my exterior, everything will be okay. And that's just, I think, immaturity mindset. And also I was just avoiding what I needed to actually deal with, but I wasn't capable at that time. So that was like, I'm going to be a fitness model. And that's where I literally did change my last name to Bunny, that a little bunny rabbit ran by my feet. And obviously I didn't want to go back to my past or have my husband's last name. So I changed my name to Jill Bunny.
Love it.
That was literally why I did it. Yeah. Makes no sense, but
it's adorable, though.
That was my new beginning. And what I realized was strength to me at that age was going on stage and being one of those bikini girls, the competitors that wore, those little spinky suits with all the sparkles and the 5-inch heels. And I did it. And I would say a characteristic of me is I will do something when I say I'll do it and I'll actually commit. I will go full force. It's like an all or nothing type of deal with me. And in 5 years before I retired, I ended up being a 5-time bikini champion and 4-time cover model, and had a wonderful time, and actually met my new husband. And it was introduced by one of my best friends, and he is just the most incredible man. But through that journey of competing, if people kind of know what that is, it's harsh on the body. And looking back at having an eating disorder, it was just another way for me to fill that void and control, but also in some weird way, you could hide it because you got acknowledged for strength in that manner.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say that it was a healthy thing for me to do, but it was part of my healing journey.
Yeah.
And during the end of it, I realized I was exhausted, and there was certain symptoms that I was experiencing, and I thought it was a lot more than what I saw other competitors have. And it was a time where I had my contacts, I couldn't see properly, and I kept opening up an entire box. And my boyfriend and my husband now said, like, maybe you need to go to the eye doctor. Like, you just threw out $300 of contacts. So I was
Wow.
like, okay, I'll go. And that was my journey for about 6 months, where they saw degeneration in the eye, and then obviously did some further testing and was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. And I'm very good at avoiding things. And at that point, when I was told, I wasn't ready to hear that. And I remember saying, I got to go to the gym and train. And that was really hard for my husband, Luke, because he saw me in so much pain, but I wasn't helping myself. And I remember, quite a few times we had arguments, and, we took time apart, but we needed to do that. And that was my own self sabotage, where I didn't realize that I am deserving of an incredible man. And we
Mm.
have to go through those hard times to realize what we have. And I knew that it was time for me to retire and for us to work on our relationship and have a new chapter in our life. So we did one last show. I won, thank goodness, because otherwise I probably would have kept
Of
going.
course you did.
I would have kept going. And, I was still exhausted. And then when did some more tests, I thought it was my MS, and then it came back with thyroid cancer. So in a very short time, I could not believe what was happening to me. And through thyroid cancer, it was easy with the diagnosis. It was actually easy through the thyroidectomy. It was afterwards where I put 70 pounds on. So I have yo-yoed each and every way. And that was really hard because I'm a health coach. I know how to eat. I know how to train. And despite all that, I put on weight, and I couldn't get it off. And that was for me a great learning experience for the women that I worked with, because I understand that you can try as hard as you want and still not get the results. And through that, I realized I can't physically push myself to control this. I have to work on what I needed to work on all along, which was my mindset, because I was very negative, depressed, and anxious, but nobody knew. I could hide that.
Yeah.
And that was when I thought, okay, you know what? I'm going to go and work my brain muscle just like I did for years in the gym. And that's when I found CBT. I learned about my demons, learned about my negative thoughts, and really rewired that. It took a long time.
Yeah.
And through that, I realized that was the missing piece in my weight loss coaching practice. And also realized that I want to become a therapist, because this is the missing piece, and it absolutely changed my life. And, that's where I'm at right now, through all my struggles. And I know we'll talk about this, but I don't think I'm a victim. And that's just the biggest thing that has allowed me to push through. Because had I thought that, I probably would be depressed still and not doing anything with my life. And I realized that we all have an opportunity through hardships to make something of it. And it's the first thing is not saying that we're a victim, because I always say there's an opportunity in anything that we go through, should we choose to learn about it.
That is so incredible and so true. If anyone could have fallen into that victim mindset,
Mhm.
these two back-to-back diagnoses that are really scary. And what
Mhm.
I love, the thing is, I know that we both believe this, that victim mentality is so compelling,
Mhm.
because especially if you've had a hard childhood, we've shared, like, we
Yeah.
share a lot of the same life experiences, and the childhood experience of needing like love and care, and then coupled with problems that then you can be, it's so compelling because you'll get that, oh, baby, the poor baby from people,
Oh,
which
yeah,
feels like love.
it does. It's a very
Yeah.
warped sense where
Yeah.
especially as a child, if you have been abandoned and
Yeah.
avoided, and it's hard to find that strength in us to realize that we're confident and have self, efficacy.
Mm-hmm.
What I realized through, other things, it was part of me and being a victim at the beginning because I got attention.
Yep.
I got attention when I was sick, and it
Yep.
felt good feeling loved in a weird way.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really hard to move past that, to realize that, will people love me or I love myself if I'm me and I don't have a problem? And
Yes.
that was I always have problems, but
Yeah.
that was the biggest thing. And it was even
Yes.
changing my social media that I had before on there, cancer survivor, MS warrior. And
Yeah.
that was like a part of my identity. And I realized that that was a form of attention that I was getting and seeking. And it was when I took that off and said, you know what, I can inspire people without that. Or I
Yes.
talk about it in context, but it's not my whole story. I felt more powerful because when I
That's
used that as a leading story all the time, I was getting sympathy and
yeah.
people would feel bad. But it's like, I'm a
Mhm.
strong woman. Right. And that was the shift that I needed to do for myself.
That message is the thing that changes lives because, just having that in the back of your story, being able to say that that is my strength. It's not
Mhm.
my weakness. I just wanted to comment on one of the things you said because I relate to it. When we learn that, I mean, I know that I also had an eating disorder, same
Mhm.
thing, hospitalized, but the big thing that I'm thinking of is my mom, that one of the way things that I learned about motherly love was that if I needed her, if I was in bad shape, she was so present. But if I was beautiful, strong, intelligent, didn't have a problem or was able to handle my problems,
Mhm.
she was not good with that. I didn't get what I needed. So
Mhm.
it's like really reprogramming our brains to understand that, do I want that false love? Because
Yeah.
that's just really meeting their need,
Correct.
right?
Yeah. And that
So
was, and I
yeah.
remember that too, to back off that in a different way. Because I think we all have complex relationships with our mom. And I love my mom so much
No,
and I
I
appreciate
understand.
her more than
Yeah.
anything now.
Yes.
But I think that's why I loved her so much that we, beat heads, but it's also she knew what I was capable of doing and saw that I was a 1.0 and she didn't know how to take that.
Yeah.
And what I realized and my gratitude and where I've come now full circle is that she is the person that sees the worst of me, has always seen the worst. And that's usually what moms do. That's what they're
Yeah.
there for, their daughters and their
Yes.
sons.
Yeah.
And the thing is, I realized that when I was at my best, I wouldn't call her, right? Because we're going and doing all these great things. And then I thought, she doesn't care about that, but she deserves to see the best. If she sees the worst, she has to see the best.
Yes.
And that has been the biggest change. And she has become one of my best friends because now I realize that she'll always be there when I'm hurting, but she deserves me when I'm my best.
Love it.
And that's where a lot of the times our friendships and our closest people, we lose that part and they deserve to see all facets of our life.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how did you move out of that victim mentality? What happened? What was the transformation for you?
Yeah. It was one of like a CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. It was an exercise. Like legit, it was, I remember to a T. It was a lot of things, stepping stones to do it. So it wasn't just one exercise.
Yeah.
But I would say that this was the light bulb moment that I was ready to really propel forward. And it was to do like a visual exercise and think about, when you have your funeral, what do you want them to say? That was the biggest thing because I thought, oh shit. Like if it was 10 years ago, it would be that I had died of an eating disorder. And there wouldn't be many things that they would have found something, but to me, I was like, that wouldn't have done it. And then it was, being a fitness competitor or going through MS and cancer. And then that being that story. And I didn't want that. And I'd be like, that's me being a victim where there's a lot of other things that I can do in this world. And that's where I looked at and I said, no matter what happens to me health wise or whenever I do pass, I don't want that to be the never ending story. I want it to be that I was here, I was purposeful and passionate and really made a difference. That's what I wanted. Cause
Yes.
again, I feel at the end of the day, when we're no longer here, what further lessons and what things can we pass on? And I was like, that's what I wanted because I didn't want to be a victim.
You know what I noticed about you when you spoke at Women in Business? I noticed because you were up there and you're so beautiful, and you were, this fitness model, every girl's dream, the bikini
Mhm.
with the high heels shit going on. And even someone in the audience said that they visualized you and cut out their picture, and they didn't realize that they were trying to manifest your body, but they ended up manifesting you right in the place right
Yeah,
there.
that
That
was
was
like,
great.
it gave me chills. Gave me
That was
chills.
really good. But what I noticed, and it really stood out to me, was that you were talking about, because you also do marketing, branding, which we
Mhm.
have to showcase too, talk about, because that's another whole part of who you are.
Mhm.
But you talked about taking your social media, which you just mentioned,
Mhm.
and removing all those bikini shots
Yep.
and being willing to have a less following
Mhm.
in order to have this identity that you wanted, and that to have
Mhm.
the right people who were following you.
Yeah.
And what I loved about it is that what you did for me was, because I've spent all this time building, these counseling centers or whatever, and a lot of the time wasn't building a following. I'm just being genuine out there and sharing what I share. And it
Yeah.
wasn't like a big thing for me to like create like all this momentum in social media. So I kind of always feel like a schlep, just like, so, you have a way of making
Mhm.
people not feel badly about where they are. And there's something in that you do, and I don't know exactly what I'm even asking, to be honest with you, but
Mhm.
I'm trying to capture that essence that you have, that you've taken this kind of glamour. If you Google
Google.
her, you're
Okay, that's
gonna
my
see like
goal.
the hottest shit ever. Like the
Seriously,
girl
this
you're
is another
totally
lesson
jealous
because
of.
we'll go on many tangents. Whatever you put online stays online. So all those
Exactly.
20-year-old photos, I got not a lot of clothes on. So
You're naked, woman,
I'm pretty much naked.
basically. No,
That
but
was
you're
what I put
beautiful.
value. But, and I look at those photos and they're beautiful, but I know how much that person was struggling. And that
Yep,
girl was the
I
1.0,
get it.
right? And that's the hard thing, that we see these photos, we see this, and we're like, wow, doesn't she have an amazing life? And it's funny because I had to pretend that that was amazing, but I was hurting so, so much inside. And it was all that exterior. And that was that whole shift that I believe that I had to go through my illnesses to be able to see from a different perspective of what value I had. And I had no confidence. All you say, you look great, but just because you have a body doesn't mean that you're confident. And I was an enemy to myself, very terrible speaking, like what I would think. And I'm like, I want to be my best friend. I want to be able to, you know, enjoy being alone. And I couldn't do that. I didn't know how. Right. And that was that whole transformation, and me changing and deleting all those photos and taking it off social media was, I wanted people to see who I really was deep inside. And that was where, when I look at that, I'm proud. I'm proud of what information I put out there because, again, we know in our heart what makes us happy. And I know that some of those photos and stuff that I was putting, it didn't help other women. And that's what I'm about. I'm like, I don't want you to compare. I don't want you to do any of those things. I want to inspire you to make it a better day. And
Yes.
that stuff was vanity for myself.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it was pain, right? It
Very,
was like
very painful. Hmm.
a way to not be in pain. I relate to that, just looking at pictures, what other people see. We can see our heart. We can see
Yeah.
what we're feeling in that
Yeah.
moment.
And that
And
was
it
the
can be
biggest thing, is what I say to a lot of women. If we really want to make that 2.0, that different life that we dream of, or maybe we don't even know, there are three things that we have to really account for. And one is stop avoiding shit that we really need to do and deal with. Because all we'll do is reflect into a self, like maladaptive behaviors in order to not deal with shit that we actually have to do. We do it all the time. And a lot of the time is scrolling on social media.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? Boundaries. I am a big believer in boundaries, but a lot of us have spongy boundaries that will do anything for everybody else. So we have rigid ones that, oh, I can do everything. Nobody needs to help me. I've been both angles. So we need healthy boundaries to be happy. Right. And then the biggest thing is we have to stop making excuses for ourselves. And that's that victim mentality. I know
Yeah.
it's harsh, but those three things make a huge difference in us building that 2.0 and whatever that might be.
Can you, go further into
Mhm.
that, like speak more of that? Because,
Yeah.
we got up to you being,
Yeah.
a fitness model, but you have done so much. And
Yes.
those three pillars that you just described, I'd love for you to describe to people who are listening because it will help them.
Yeah. So kind of my 1.0, that was everything that I talked about. And it was even being married, and still being like with my husband that I love, I was still in a 1.0. And that's not a bad thing because a lot of us here, when we want to do a 1.0 and 2.0, we think, well, 1.0 is bad. There's some amazing things in a 1.0, but we know that there are other things that we would want in life for us to look back on and be like, I'm actually happy and healthy, purposeful. And it just feels like I'm on ecstasy or something. I never had it,
Yeah.
but like that's what it feels like. We
Yeah.
just want that 2.0
Yeah.
feeling.
Yeah.
And it's going to be different for each person. Right. And that was where I looked at and took a long time to ask myself in different areas that what would make me happy. And my ego came in a lot of the time, like, I'm going to write a book, I'm going to do this.
Mm.
And it was all to kind of get attention again, because at the end of the day, we are human beings and want that connection. And it was like, no, would that really make you happy? And I kept going again and again and again. And it went into finances, went into business, went into everything that what would make me happy.
Mm.
And it shifted into really developing like my therapy practice and one to one. Because a lot of the time it was do group, do masterminds, do all these big things that we hear about that would make us happy and grow your business. And I realized I don't want to grow. I don't want to run a 7-figure business. I like to be at home working with people one to one and really seeing the value and change. That was my 2.0. That not being a cover model, not doing those things, but actually being behind the scenes and seeing people change and happy. And then it was like being with my husband, having a detached home and having a dog. Like that's what makes me happy because I was just like, it's amazing when you're not trying to push for things that are exterior, but inside. And I realized that my 2.0, I was like, I just want to be happy with myself and be able to be present and quiet. And when I went to Greece with my girlfriends this summer, for the first time in my entire life, I sat by like the beach and looked at the water and I didn't think of anything. And I caught myself, oh, holy shit, like this is actually happening. I read about this in books and I've tried to be like, I'm just going to sit here and do nothing and never could do it. And I couldn't believe it. I'm like, oh my God. And then I just went back to thinking about nothing. It was the most incredible experience. And I realized like that was it, that I was happy to be able to be by myself without having to do anything. It was crazy. That's my 2.0. And that's why I tell people that they've got to look at it and it's different for everybody, that we are where we are, but where do we want to be? And that has to be written down that nobody else can see it if they did want to or not. What would make you happy? And usually it's very simple, but we have to look back at ourselves and ask ourselves those questions because otherwise we are going to fill it with shit that is actually just going to keep detouring and setting us back. Because at the end of the day, it is very simple what we need. And a lot of the time it's love.
Oh boy, girl.
Mm-hmm.
If I zoom out in what you're just saying and just the picture of your life, and I think about how so many of us are your 2.0,
Mm-hmm.
people may be at it that life that's
Mm-hmm.
depth and meaning, and they feel that they have to have what you had experienced in your 1.0 in
Mm-hmm.
this, being, getting all these accolades and all these things externally.
Yeah.
And it's like the discovery, I think, over time, when you have external rewards, but
Mm-hmm.
the internal experience is pain, and you did
Yes.
you did this flip,
Yeah.
but you were wise enough. Like I did a thing just recently. I've said to myself as a therapist, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to ask myself the questions, I know what to ask. So I'm like,
Yeah.
those questions, what would make you happy? Well, what is it about that thing that would make you
Mm-hmm.
happy? And what are all the constraints? What are all the things that make you think that you shouldn't do that thing? Well, because
Yeah.
of what this person thinks or that, or what looks good, or But
Mm-hmm.
the freedom, like that's why I mentioned the thing about the social media
Yeah.
number, the following.
It
You
doesn't
gave
matter.
freedom. It doesn't matter.
No. And I also look at it from that where, and it feels really good just to love yourself inside. Like I
Yes.
can't describe it because I've been exterior trying to find it.
Mhm.
And until you go through some stuff to realize we're always going to think that next thing is going to do it, but it's actually always in the process, right? It always is in the process. When we look at, sure, we can do a marathon, but what's next? What's next? What's next? I
Yep.
was always doing that. And now it's just, I'll have goals. It's not that I'm just sitting here doing nothing, but it's always in the process. That is the key thing that I always kind of look at for anybody is we have to enjoy that kind of realm along the way,
Yes.
right? Like
Yes.
that is utmost importance.
Yeah. Because
Yeah.
it's that running to the next thing makes we're never present.
No. And that's where a lot of the time social media has kind of bit us in the butt when it
Bad.
comes to that. And
Mhm.
that's where, a lot of us struggle where I hear women say, I'm afraid to be known
Yeah.
on there because of like either hate or something like that. Cause,
Yeah.
people can be mean
Yeah.
or, it's scary to put yourself out there. But
Yeah.
this is where I look at and bring that back to boundaries
Yeah.
that, you have to ask yourself, why are we on there?
Mhm.
What's the point in being on there? If you're business, sure.
Mhm.
But do the people like when it comes to your business, do you have to share everything? Maybe you want to. There's a lot of parts about myself that I don't share on social
Yeah.
media because at the end of the day, I know what I'm putting out there is a value for that specific thing. And that's all those people need to come and get access and information to.
Yes.
Right. So that's the most important thing is why we're on there and what is the end result.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, on my account is to give value, but it's also I run a business. So at the end of the day, I would hope that that resonates with a client and somebody so that I can work with them one to one and really build that relationship. That's
Yes.
why I'm on there. If I didn't have
Yeah.
it, I wouldn't have it. My husband doesn't have social media,
Mhm.
which I love about him. But
Yes.
that's where we have to look at and say, why do we have it?
Mhm.
Right? Because there's only facets, and that's where boundaries come in. And that is important to do beyond anything. Boundaries for work, boundaries for personal reasons. And a lot of it from women that I work with, they say, well, if I set boundaries, then like I'm going to disappoint people because boundaries sound very harsh. But I always say, if you look at boundaries, how is that helping that other person? Because when you set boundaries, they are also benefiting. And we
Definitely.
have to look at that. And that makes such a huge difference because us saying, no, I'm not going to, pick up my phone at 7 o'clock to talk
Mhm.
to my best friend because I'm with my kids. Well, how is that benefiting my best friend? Well, she has time for her family, whatever that might be. Boundaries are key, but look at how it's helping the other individual, especially for human givers like us women. A lot of the time,
Yes.
it is
Yes.
very helpful.
And you know what I love, Jill? I love that. I love when people say no to me because then I
Mhm.
can trust their yes.
Oh, I love
Like,
that.
you
Hmm.
know, it's
Yeah.
like it makes me really value that when they say yes, they mean it. That
Yep.
we're in such a situation as women that we women will say yes to things, and we have to keep asking, "Are you sure? Are you
Hmm.
sure?" Because we're not trusting one another to be good to ourselves,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Isn't that funny?
And that's
So,
like boundaries where you come back and you're
mhm,
2.0. And that's the most important thing is like our life is the most important thing. We are a priority. And how are we making that? And that's where, again, I always say to sit down and, I brain dump every morning about, my 2.0.
yeah.
And because it's important to
Tell
me
us
to
how.
connect to
What do you
her.
mean? What do you do when
I
you say
might
you
just pick
brain
like a
dump?
question. I might pick
Yeah.
like, what does she want to think of today? Or if it's like a holiday, how does she want to feel? Let's say on Christmas Day, how does she want to feel?
Love
And,
it.
and I would look at that versus the 1.0. And because when we start asking some of those things, or how have I changed in a year, or how would she change, writing in third person, I connect to her in the morning. And
Yeah.
then I'm more likely to be her during the day. And I think the biggest thing for myself was picking from my 2.0, I'd say, what does she like to wear, for example?
Yes.
Right. And it was interesting because when we start to journal and write about that 2.0, there'll be things that are missing that give us a lot of clarity too. So when I was writing about it, I never once write about my 2.0 wearing sweatpants, not showering and washing her hair. But when I was depressed and like going through stuff, I literally didn't even wear a pair of jeans. I wore sweatpants, a sweatshirt, like old podcasts, I would wear it. My hair was dirty, wouldn't put makeup on. And I'm like, I didn't write that in my 2.0. I wrote that I like to wear jeans and dress up, make myself feel great. And I
Yes.
thought to myself, what the heck? What am I waiting for? To get all this 2.0 to say to do it, I had to start doing it. And then from that day, I literally have made a rule. I will not wear sweatpants. I dress up every single day. And I literally threw out all my old clothes, even my socks and underwear, and I got all new stuff over time.
Yes.
And I connected to that. So it's looking at things that we're missing and also things that we write down there that we actually have full control over to do right now. And that's where it brings up excuses, because I hear that all the time. Well, my stomach might not look so great. I have clients that say that. So I don't know if I want to wear a sweater, or I have to pull a sweater over. So those are excuses we're telling ourselves to be stuck in a 1.0. And that's
Yes.
where it's like, no, I'm taking responsibility that I might not feel that great, but you know what? I'm going to do it anyway, because then that's less likely that we're going to go for the cheesies.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
It's like creating the environment that the Cheez-Its body isn't going to live well in, but creating that
Yeah. Yeah.
experience,
Yeah.
right? And yeah,
There's
that's
certain
really
things that we
cool.
have full control
Mhm.
over, right? And
Yeah.
we have to stop making excuses, because it's the easiest thing to do. And
Yeah.
also avoiding that. We
Mhm.
have to, like, we look at it, you could even journal and say, what things have I been avoiding that really are stopping me from living that 2.0 that I created? And then it's
Yeah.
picking off one and chipping it off and say, okay, I'm not going to avoid calling the dentist today. Right?
Yeah.
Like, there's silly
Yes.
things like that. Like, I do not call the doctors and dentists, because obviously I'm afraid of all that shit, because it's never good for me
Yes.
anyway. So I'm
Yes.
like, I'll just leave it. And
Yeah.
then when I do call and everything's fine, I'm like, oh, that was easy.
Yes.
And every time I'm thinking, why did I make such a big deal of it? I'm putting that mental capacity to be avoiding things. And it takes more work to avoid than it is to actually do it.
It totally does. It's such
Mm-hmm.
a drainer.
Mm-hmm.
You've probably heard this 1,000 times, but like fear,
Yeah.
face everything and recover, or fuck everything and run. I don't know if I could say fuck on here, but I just
Yeah,
did.
you can.
So
Otherwise,
beep.
you'll go.
Wah, wah, wah.
I love that.
One of the things that stood out to me that you said, and I'm like putting your two concepts together, which you
Mm-hmm.
probably already have. You were describing boundaries, right? And
Mm-hmm.
and then you're also describing being your own best friend.
Mm-hmm.
And what I have found, and I'm hearing it in you, tell me if this is you.
Mm-hmm.
I have found that the more I became my best friend, my own encourager, like the person I want to spend all
Mm-hmm.
my time with, like, I would be, where would I be without me? Nowhere. Right. So it's like, I
Yeah.
always, so what I really, discovered was when I had that best friendship inside myself. So it was a strength inside
Mm-hmm.
that then I could be soft on the outside. So the boundaries were in place,
Mm-hmm.
like, but when we're avoiding and in that 1.0, the external is all the boundaries.
Correct.
Like it's a harder on the outside.
Yes.
Right. And we
Yep.
don't need even to have that when we're grounded inside.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
You're
Yeah,
exactly right. And again, it's a hard concept
it
to say that
is.
we want to be our own best friend,
Mhm.
right? It is a hard concept, but we have to live with ourselves each and every day. So why not do the work to love ourselves? We deserve that.
Jill,
Or we
did
can
you
just
not?
spend every day, every month just hating ourselves. It's a choice, and it's not easy. It's not just saying, okay, I love myself today. It's a commitment and a like vow. And for someone that's been married twice, I've given vows to two people.
Mhm.
And I swear, I said to my husband, if something ever happens or whatever, I'm just marrying myself, because I know that I got control over her.
Yes, exactly. I love that. But think
Yeah.
about like, Jill, did we not, our person inside us, like, didn't we just beat the shit out of ourselves? Eating
Mm-hmm.
disorder, I feel like it's basically bringing an abuser around with you
Yeah.
24 hours a day.
Yeah.
And it's like the development of that relationship over time. It's like even just getting to know yourself,
Yeah.
like what
It's
you're saying,
cruel what
asking
we can
questions.
do.
Yeah.
We can be so cruel,
Yes.
right? But we can also be so kind, and it's a choice. And it doesn't
Yeah.
happen overnight, but that's like the rewiring, go to therapy. It's all neuroplasticity. We can change our brain, and it's a choice.
Mhm.
And I'm like,
Yes.
I'm a firm believer. I'm like, if you only knew the shit that I would say to myself, and everyone probably can agree, be like, man, I'd be like in a loony bin. Probably.
Yeah. I
We
got
all
it.
would be in a loony bin if we
Yes,
actually were
100%.
honest of what we
Yes.
said.
Yes.
But it's saying, okay, you know what, enough's enough. And I'm going to make the steps to heal and just love myself, because it's amazing waking up and actually looking in the mirror and being like, I got you. I love you. It's
Yes.
amazing. Yeah.
Yes. When I
Hmm.
start to get stressed out, like in the morning or whatever, if I'm in a
Hmm.
rush or I feel like, like stress to me is like, I'm never where I belong. Like I should be
Hmm.
somewhere else. I'm here doing this, but I should be
Yeah.
there. But when I say to myself, Al, you got this. It's okay. You're
Hmm.
good. Like actually being the wise observer outside of ourselves and interacting like that
Yeah.
is so powerful, isn't it?
That is the biggest thing. And I call it a multiple perspective approach. That
Yes.
out of any situation, we can have a multiple perspective. And that's
Love
what
it.
like we talk about in therapy all the time, that we can be in the same situation, have different thoughts and feelings, and then we act
Yes.
differently. And it's
Yes.
a choice. And that's what I always say is, what is the other perspective that we can
Yes.
have? And that's just making that shift. And it takes time. But oh my gosh, if everyone's still listening to our escapades, it's do the work. You deserve it. Like, oh, I don't want any regrets or guilt or shame when I decide to leave this earth, when that time
Yes.
is up for me. And
Mhm.
I know that now I don't have any guilt, shame, but I would have if I had kept being in that 1.0. Like I'm
Yeah.
like, yep, I'm pretty proud of the person that I become. And that's what everyone deserves to have.
Yeah.
Hmm.
There's a thing that I read that you wrote about that you said, and it was about, and I don't remember the word. Help me. It's about the responses. So it was
Hmm.
like you took something that was about our reaction to things, our
Hmm.
thoughts, and then you
Hmm.
have this word that you say. What is that? It's like a healthy. What is it? It's that you say a
Oh,
healthy response.
oh, like a 2.0 response.
Yeah, but there's a
Oh,
really cool phrase that you
shit.
use. I wish I could remember what it is right now, and I'm drawing a blank. I don't know why, because it's so good. I'll have to like
Ah,
message you
crap.
with it.
Yeah, you
No,
will.
you
I'm like,
say it. It's what you say. It's about, having this like negative reaction to things internally, like negative thoughts.
yeah.
But then you had this like cool phrase that you say about like a healthful response, I
Oh, a
think.
helpful. Yeah. So I always say like a helpful response or a
Yes.
2.0 response. That's kind of what I
Right.
always say, that we have a 1.0 thought, but we have a choice to rewire that, look at a different perspective, and give a 2.0. And it
Yeah.
doesn't mean it's a positive affirmation that we don't believe, because our brain's just going to be a Pac-Man. And if we don't believe it, like I always say, there's like a square, and we have these beliefs about ourselves, and we will feed that belief if it's
Yes.
feeling like helpless or unlovable or unworthy. Right. But then if something else happens that actually counteracts that belief, and it's a triangle, it can't get in there. So
Yeah.
then our brain will be like, yeah, well, that was luck, and I'm going to change it to a rectangle. So see, I'm still helpless.
Mm.
But when we start to rewire that in a 2.0, and not positive, where we're like, I don't believe that, but looking at the evidence, that's when we can start to morph and change. So I
Yeah.
always say is look at the evidence, like take it to a court of law. We have an emotional brain and a logical brain. We're all very smart people, but when our emotions are revved up, man, we can be really dumb. We can be very
Yes.
dumb. And
Yes.
that's where I say we all have an emotional brain. Trust me. We
Yes.
all have those moments. And even though I say I talk like I have a 2.0, I got an emotional brain, and I laugh at some of the stuff I still say to myself, but I can snap out of it. And it's
Yes.
okay. It's not affecting me for days on end. It's just a moment. And I realize it'll pass. It's okay. And what is the lesson to learn from it? But we have to be able to look at things from multiple perspectives. That's the key thing for us in order to shut down that emotional brain from it taking over and bringing that logic back in.
I love that. And I would love
Mhm.
to hear if we still have time. I would
Yeah.
love to hear like an example if you have one, like just like for someone out there who's struggling, maybe somebody like our younger selves,
Hmm.
you know, that because I know that the way that our minds work, I know that I can have a mood swing on a
Yeah.
dime,
We
you
can.
know?
It's like it's all chemicals, and I always look at that
Mhm.
where it's taking a moment. So usually what I'll do, like a very quick thing is think, feel, choose. So
Mhm.
I will breathe in for a count of 3 and say think, feel, and exhale for a count of 7, choose, where it kind of brings my logic brain back in. I've trained it to okay, shift off that emotion.
Mhm.
But an example of that would be, as a younger self, oh my gosh, they never texted me back. Like he doesn't like me, or my friend doesn't like me. Oh my gosh. And we just go on a rampage.
Mhm.
And then we look at it from that 2.0. It's like, well, what is the evidence that proves that? I don't know if they're busy. I don't know if something happened. Their phone might be dead. And what's all the different things? We're like, oh, I could come up with 100 reasons why Mr. John didn't message me.
Yes.
Right. And then it's looking at it saying, okay, well, until I have the evidence, I'm not going to say that he doesn't like me. We just go straight to that. And it's
Yes.
saying there could be various reasons. And the only way that I'm going to know that is when I contact him to understand that information. And that brings the logic back in. So
Yeah.
that's usually what I do is there's multiple perspectives for it, but we'll just go to the like a catastrophic ending most of the time. But our brain wants an answer. That's what I usually say. It just wants an
Yes.
answer. And if we program it to be negative, yep, it'll go straight there. And we
Yes.
still do that. I do.
Yes.
And you know what the cool thing is? Where one day you won't. You'll come to
Yes.
like a normal 2.0 response. And you're like, holy shit. Like my brain went there first. I remember when I have those, I'm like, and I still have them. My brain doesn't
Yes.
always go there. I go
Yeah.
1.0.
Yeah.
But when I go to 2.0, I'm like, yeah, this shit's working.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And it compounds.
Yeah.
It just, and that's
Yep.
the thing. It's like this. And the more, I think the more painful experiences you have that
Mhm.
you overcome, it's like practicing and practicing. And you can
Mhm.
look back and see, oh, this
Yeah.
is just another lesson, either you win or you learn, right?
There's
That,
lessons. And I think when we get older, we're going to go through
mhm,
pain and
mhm,
suffering. That's part of the human experience.
mm,
But I always say that part of that human experience, we can either choose for it to hurt. And I'm not saying to not be emotional with it. We grieve. We are allowed to be in that sadness. That's
mhm.
part of it. But the
Yeah.
thing is, when we just allow that to be the only thing, that's what
Mhm.
kind of puts that detrimental thing. It's that I want to remember the positives. I want to remember the good things of all of that.
Yeah.
And that's where, the greatest things can happen. And that was the big thing from, not avoiding and kind of coming back to that, where I remember at that time where I was just not as mentally sound. I went to the gym when my granddad, he was my best friend when he passed away. I
Mm,
wasn't there because I couldn't.
mm,
Right. And I remember that. I'm like, damn, like, do I regret that? Yes. But I also look, I wasn't ready. And then when my grandma passed this year, I was there. And I was so honored to be part of that, where it was all part of a learning experience. And
yes.
now that I look at that, and it was very positive, that
Mhm,
whole thing where I'm like, life is hard when we lose somebody we love.
mhm.
But I also chose to see that differently because of what I had done in the past. And it was
Yeah.
a easier way of grieving. But again, when they're older and their time is there, that's different than a traumatic experience, like for
Mhm.
example, for yourself.
Yeah.
But it's choosing to see the good in that and those good memories that really help us move forward.
Yeah. One thing I did, I just recently did it. And I might have even told you when we were together, but at around the year mark, I said, because it seemed like, like there was a bomb that just blew up in my house and it just seemed
Yeah.
like just rubble. And I said, I'm going to make a list of everything, all the ways I've grown since that day.
Yeah.
And I had made a decision at day 3 when my husband died. I made a decision that, and my kids and I, we were together. I just said, we have to find a way to gain more than we lost. If it takes us the rest of our lives, we have to
Yeah.
do that.
That's
So
so
I kept a,
powerful.
yeah, right. I mean, I kept a pad next to my bed, like a book, and I would write down anything I gained on the worst day. I mean, I'd wake up in the middle of the night sobbing,
Hmm.
like I could cry even thinking about it. But that next to my bed, I was like, in the morning, what did I get? What did I learn? I learned how to live through the night in my hardest time. I learned
Yeah.
how to cuddle up with my whatever it was that I gained. I'm closer to my kids today
Hmm.
because we've had to, go through a hard time together. But what you just described about your grandpa and your grandma, I don't know if you put it that way, how you
Hmm.
call them, Nana, Papa, I don't know,
We got so many
Mima,
terms.
Mima, Pipa, whatever. I'm sorry, but anyhow, you, your when I hear that, it's so beautiful because I
Hmm.
hear this young woman who ran away because it hurt or whatever the
Hmm.
reason was. But that depth of that experience was a gain.
It
Like,
was
I love
exactly
that
what you
because
said.
then it's like the
There's
law of
always something to
polarity.
learn. There's always something to learn.
Yes.
And we can choose to be like, that was painful. I'm going to go through it again. Or it's like, I'm going to go through it again. That's part of
Yes.
life. But how do I
But
want to
you,
look at it differently? And I did. And I'm like, it felt amazing. And it also helps having a husband, a first responder, and he's sees a lot. So he's
yeah.
helped me through that. And it's just connecting to people and also looking at how I would see that differently and then choosing to act on that.
You know what I
And it's
love
been a
too?
big help.
Your regret. I love this
Hmm.
about, like, and this is like the way you totally think this way. Your regret points to what your value system is. It points to your 2.0 because you didn't want to run.
No.
Like, so it really shows your greatness.
Yeah. I was tired of running.
Yeah.
More tired of running than leaning in. I was like, just lean in, because there's always support there to help. We're never doing it alone. It's when you run away, you're alone. I was like, I'm going in, I'm leaning in to anything and everything that hurts, but I know I have support along the way to get there, but it feels so much easier.
Yeah.
Like that fear and anxiety of just avoiding is terrible. It was haunting over me. And it was like, I'm done with this. Let's kind of push forward and see a different way. And all of that stuff makes it, I look back and it's not terrible. It was like, I'm really happy to be here and not there. And it's like, I've learned so much. And I'm like, wow, I did get through that.
Yes.
And that's where I look, I'm like, I can get through all the stuff again. And it's all part of it. It's just, it doesn't have to be your story.
Yeah. I love it.
Yeah.
Anything like, that when you said that Mr. whoever John doesn't call, like
That is
that's
his actual name too. That's the funny thing. I'm like, I tried to make up a random name. I'm like, of course.
Couldn't you have said like Ted or something? But
anyway, I'm just really bad at lying.
Okay. There's so many Johns out there. It doesn't matter. But he's probably not listening. But it's just
probably not.
I'm calling him. John, where the pet fudge are you? No, I'm kidding. All right. But anyhow, but when that person doesn't call, our brain writes that story, fills in the blank. Like you said, like needs a story to explain it. Right.
Yep.
Now, and I have so much shit to say and I know we have to go, but my one other thing I want to say, that thing when you were saying, oh, he doesn't like me or whatever that story was about Mr. John that I keep repeating, that I would say to people, let's go all the way to the edge of the cliff.
Oh, I love the worst case, best case scenario. You should play the best friends. I can win the best case.
Think about it this way. So John totally hates you. John found everything wrong with you possible, and he's completely rejecting you. 100%. First of all, who the hell would reject Jill? Anyhow, no one who had any mind. But anyhow, so let's say that's the whole thing.
Yeah.
Now the question is, okay, now what?
What's the best thing?
But even if it's the best,
it is the best thing.
The best. But really, honestly, like, are you okay still? Like, are we okay if John doesn't like us and rejects us?
Absolutely.
And
it's a choice.
Yes, it's a choice.
And it's always,
to be okay.
And it's hard to be rejected. I will.
Oh God, almighty,
it hurts. I look at that and it's still the pit of my stomach when
it does, right?
That rejection's hard and that can make us very rigid. But I also say when somebody rejects us, it's also more than that, but then look at what other things are available to us. There's an opportunity. And I would have never, ever been in Canada with my family, met my new husband that I love so much, open up 2 companies. Like I never would have had any of this. I'd be in England, probably like taking care of 3 kids and depressed and taking like all these medications.
Yes.
That's exactly what I've been making, like £6 an hour minimum wage.
Yes.
And I'm a completely different person. And because he rejected me, he gave me that opportunity to create my 2.0.
I love that. That's the same thing we were saying, like just someone saying no is a good thing. Like it's
someone saying no, it's heartbreak, but it's also an opportunity for us to rewrite and do something that we never thought possible. So I always say, and I would leave this with anybody, any hardship is an opportunity waiting. The door is open and it's your choice of what you want to make of it.
100%. Now, what I need to have you share is this whole other greatness that you do, this rebranding thing. Can you talk about those businesses?
Yes,
because
actually,
I want to show where you are.
Yes. So actually, it was a kind of cool part of the 2.0 that one of my last cover was actually through my cancer diagnosis and kind of revamping and going into CBT. And that was actually how I met my best friend, Kristen Crowley. She had a thyroid issue and messaged me on Instagram. Yeah. And then lo and behold, we just ended up being in the same country, the same state at the same time. And we kind of realized that we had a gift together. So she is a retired news anchor and PR. And obviously I've done quite a bit of modeling and I love photos. And, you know, it's type of creativity. My parents are very science-based. You probably guys all probably kind of figured that out. So my creativity outlet was like, you ain't making money off arts, girl. Go to science. That was my parents. They're very militant. I had to listen to them. And so it was a creativity outlet. And we realized that from a business perspective, a lot of us need visual marketing or a way to speak to our ideal clients and not the bullshit. And through the not actually wanting to create another business, ended up doing that with my best friend, where we basically do retreats, photo shoots for women in business so that they get all their content in 2-3 days for an entire year. And we help them with the messaging, with the wording, so that they can connect with their, I call it their 2.0 clients. And it's amazing to be able to be in business with a best friend. I never thought that would happen. And just to have a polar opposite of a therapy clinical practice, and then doing photo shoots and going to like Dominican and Tulum and just having fun. Like I never would have thought that I would be able to come back in the aesthetic world, but in a way that actually is helping other women in business create revenue, because, money's fun.
I freaking love what you do.
It's really fun. It's my creative
yes.
little outlet. And
I'm going with you, right?
Yeah,
I'm
you're coming
doing
to
it.
Dominican. We got a really
Is that
cool
where we're
place.
going? Okay, you got to tell me the dates.
Right, we are.
I'm going.
But people can reach out.
Are you gonna make love to the camera? I'm just kidding. That was a bad joke. We'll do that.
Can we clip that as the trailer for this?
Should
podcast?
We take it out? You want?
No, I want this
out?
as the beginning.
You want it in there? We could do that.
But too. It's just absolutely amazing, and it's kind of neat. Like obviously, you're like a therapist too, where in business for women, it's not. It's usually in our head that we like F up and don't show up. It's all about that. It's us and what we have to go through. So it's really neat to be able to be a brand therapist for people and help them personally so that they show up in their business as they should. So it's kind of a neat little thing that I get to do and help people with as well. So I feel that the world gives back what you give in, and not saying I'm not going to have hardships, but I'll go through it and I'll learn something and then I'll share about it.
What I said off camera is that you're my 2.0 podcast guest. She is. She's like my perfect podcast guest. You know what? Because you're so down to earth. You just had to say that. No,
you're pretty freaking phenomenal. Like I feel like we mesh. We even have the same like microphones.
We are just, yes, I felt it. You know what? And I think we have a lot of the historical similarities,
We're supposed to be here, but I'm so grateful. So
I am grateful too.
Yeah.
It is such an honor to have you. I have really enjoyed just spending time with you, and I'm really going to spend time with you in the tropics.
Damn right, girl.
And I got to find out about that. So we have to, well, let me end the podcast.
We'll end the podcast, then we're going to be talking again. But thank you so much again. And look forward to everything that we're going to do, and just go live out our 2.0.
Yes. And what I'd like you to say, it's all in the notes, but I'd like you to say all the places that people can find you. You have so much to offer, Jill, and I just want you to say it with your own voice.
Yep. So I'm going to make it easy on everybody. So if you just type in Jill Bunny in Google, don't look at the images. My website will show up. If you go to the website, that will take you to, my email list or Instagram, Facebook. And then obviously if you're like, damn, I want this branding stuff, Reframe Your Brand. That's on Instagram at Reframe Your Brand. And then, you can click on the links and stalk us. That's always fun.
Yes. And what is it? Just list off the beautiful things that you do. We know you're a therapist, right? That you see people one-on-one. Yep. You also coach. I just want you to be able to say what you do.
Yeah. So in Jill Bunny, if you go to that website, I do weight loss therapy coaching. Mm-hmm. So that is my clinical practice, where I take people from their 1.0 to their 2.0, helping them to no longer be on diet plans, because who wants to be on a diet plan? Nobody. That's not in our 2.0. So I get people off that roller coaster. And then that is my clinical practice in itself. And then Reframe, we do photo shoots and retreats, but also in that we do one-to-one for brand therapy, brand coaching, and just understanding how to do visual marketing that connects to your most valuable payers. That's people that pay you the money.
Payers. Well,
Not players.
girl. Either one. No, I'm just kidding. Okay. So, honey, thank you. Thank you. Is there anything that you just want to say to anyone before we wrap up?
I just want people just write 2.0 on a blank piece of paper and start writing. And what you write, you can create.
I love that. So what they would be doing when they write 2.0 on the top of the paper is everything that they desire to be in their life, right?
Yep.
I just want to
Ego
clarify.
aside, what you want.
Ego, leave the ego at the door. That's a challenge to do. That's good. Thank you so much, Jill.
Oh,
It's
thank you,
a
Allison. I
true
appreciate it.
honor, really. And it's a wrap.